Hi, and welcome to the first episode of Fast Politics with Molly Jong-Fast on YouTube. We will be coming to you 3 times a week with totally new material, separate from our podcast, nothing recycled, all completely new. And we couldn't be more excited to have former vice presidential nominee and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz as our first interview. We're going to talk about the failures of the 2024 campaign. We're going to talk about being a governor during the time of Trump 2.0. And we're going to talk about his recent visit to The Hague. Welcome, Governor Tim Walz. I feel like you and I have been through it. Not together, but through the 2024 cycle.
Serendipitous in a very strange way. Like I met you, I was, like 48th out of 50 governors that people knew or something. And you had me out. We went to correspondence dinner. That was
Yes,
a big deal for me.
that was really fun.
Big deal. And we have watched this evolution and the heartbreak of not finishing this damn job. And I think you and I, and certainly the vice president and others, knew what the result of not winning was going to be. So there it is.
So we were texting and you said, I want to talk to you about what happened at The Hague. And I actually thought you meant like a joke about how we were all going to The Hague because Dan Bongino is the deputy director of the FBI. But that's not what you meant.
No, I went to the Netherlands, and this is something, it was trade mission. Philips, the famous company, is expanding into Minnesota. I took the Mayo Clinic with me and Delta Airlines. We were in Rotterdam to look at sustainable aviation fuel, but I also spoke with members of parliament. And then I had the opportunity on 2 occasions. I spoke with a group of leaders, former NATO Secretary General and folks like that, and academics. And then I spoke in a big public forum in Amsterdam at the John Adams Institute. And it was several days after the vice president's Munich speech that sent shockwaves through Europe. And I said, look, the official position of the United States government was articulated in Munich. It's not the majority of opinion. So I was there on stage and answered questions both domestically, and our international relationships. It was fascinating. The hunger of Europe to find that America has not lost its mind collectively. The hunger of Europeans to realize that we keep our word and we can be counted on, both for security, economic, cultural ties. I think there was a hunger to make sure we were speaking very clearly that Russia was the aggressor in the Ukrainian situation. So it was fascinating. I did, and asked point blank some of these members of parliament. They're looking for, and there was a woman there, Representative Hirsch, speaking about the global feminist movement and where is the Women's March? Where are they at? And I said, look, there's a fatigue amongst, resistance, if you will, but it's expressing itself differently. And what I'm encouraged by, Molly, is that they felt the same way, that these policies are going to have real repercussions in Europe and in the United States, and there will be a political cost that someone will pay, that Trump will pay, is their hope.
I want you to first talk to me about what it's like to be a governor right now.
Yeah, it feels very similar to COVID without the direct threat, hospitals overflowing, but it feels like the uncertainty that the COVID pandemic brought is there. It feels strange to not see the federal, I never saw the Trump administration as, real good partners during COVID, but I will tell you this, and I don't know if this has been talked a lot. Mike Pence did about all he could. He called me probably every other week. Mike Pence found masks for us, things like that. Like, he was trying to make it work, but he kind of was like on the sly. He couldn't do it from. And it feels like right now there's no one to turn to. There is no, and it's just so frustrating. Just for example, the pettiness of them. One of the first things that they defunded was Lutheran Social Services. And it's based in Minnesota from my church, the ELCA. And there are great social service organizations. And one of the things they do is they legally resettle refugees who are legally here, and we get them settled. They cut off funding and threw them into disarray, and they had to lay off people. So as a governor, I'm trying to figure out, can I backfill that? How do I do it? And then last week, he went after the American Association of Geographers, which of course we know is where all the spending in the government is happening, and it's where all the cabal to overthrow democracy is happening amongst geographers. He went after it because it's an organization that I associate with. So as a governor, personally on this is just the pettiness of this, but the everyday fight, like what happens to Medicaid, what happens to our road funding, what happens, Minnesota is ahead of schedule. Xcel Energy is 5 years ahead of our 2040 goal on 100% clean energy. We are there. We're on the precipice of this. Now a lot of those investments are under attack. So I guess as a governor, you're trying to triage the situation as it stands. You're trying to craft a budget, a normal budget, in an environment where there's just such great uncertainty about what he does and what it means to our people.
Do you think that's specific to you because you ran for president against him, or do you think he's doing that?
No, he's doing that to everybody. It's just that the thing
Okay.
I think is scary about this is they find the time to be specific enough. Who the hell
Right.
was to try and cut funding to the American Association of Geographers? Although in your piece you wrote, the language around the Gulf of Mexico is more than just buffoonery. There's the nationalism, there's all that. They're better organized, but
Right.
they came after Lutheran Social Services in the first week. Like, who in God's name knows? It's a small social service organization funded, on a progressive Lutheran branch, and it happens to be mine. I think
Right.
I'm the only governor that's a Lutheran. I was one of, like, 5 members of Congress, which I think might be the problem, just so you know. A few more Lutheran, just making the case, so
When we talk through this and we talk about what it looks like, the sort of federalist, I mean, you guys have a lot more power. Like, one of the things that I always fault Democrats for is that, or at least looked at Republican, during Biden's administration, we saw Texas really, and Florida really just be like, we're doing our own thing.
yes.
Now, and Democrats can do that to a certain extent, right? I mean, they may be
Yes.
punished. Yeah. So talk us through that.
Yes, and look, I hear the thing out there is that when we get back, which we'll fight. I'll tell you what people are gonna expect is they're not gonna expect us to tinkle around the edge with the ACA. They're gonna expect universal health care. And if there's a lesson here, I always said this, we had a one-vote majority in Minnesota when we moved clean energy, we moved reproductive rights, we moved a whole slew of progressive, very popular, including things around guns and gun safety, very popular things. We moved it with a one-vote majority. And people ask, "Well, what do you call a one-vote majority?" A majority, simple as that. These guys have learned that lesson, and governors have that ability. I'm in Europe trying to foster what I can on the trade. Now, look, if they cut our funding, it's $2 billion,
Right.
out of a roughly $30 billion state budget. So it is a
Right.
massive hole that we can't fill alone, but
Right.
there are things that we can do. There are things that we can push back on. There are things that we can separate. Now, the irony of this is Republicans being all about states' rights until they're not about states' rights.
Right. Of course.
We're still establishing ourselves, we're sub-federal level of government, but we have a lot of autonomy. Like, I can be invited to the Netherlands to speak, and I said this, Molly, that I'm a rule follower that used to be politics ends at water's edge, means we
Right.
with a unified voice to that. I recognize that the position right now, official position of the federal government is that we're not gonna support Ukraine. That's not the
Right.
majority position of Americans, and you can walk that line. And I
Right.
think that's what we need to do more of. We need to push back, and again, I hope everybody and I hope Republicans know this, you are teaching us a lot of what happens when we get back and control these, that we need to deliver for people because and that's their downfall in this. Where are they delivering for people other than just angst and anger and taking it out on immigrants or whatever? No egg prices down. Now you
Right.
got folks that lost their jobs. Now you've got confusion with our neighbors. So I have to tell you, a saying I always said is you lead with good policy and good politics will follow that. And the inverse of that is true. Bad policy will lead to bad politics. And I think Democrats got caught in the wilderness that our policies are popular, but for whatever reason, we didn't articulate it in a way that turned to good politics.
So I have a theory of the case that I have shared with Biden world, and they're very mad at me, that the thing they did wrong was this cautiousness, this fearfulness about interfacing with media, social media, mainstream media. If it's scary, shut it down. If it's too popular, like calling someone weird, shut it down. Talk to me.
Yeah, and look, far be it from me to critique because I own this, that it was my responsibility to help get this thing won, and so I'll take my shortcomings on this, but I do think there is a cautiousness around that.
Yeah.
I think that we should be more willing to speak to people where they're at. I don't think we should be so worried about, are we putting ourselves out there and gonna be asked hard questions? We should be asked hard questions.
Right.
And then we should lead and talk about the things that that make a difference in people's lives. And I think people did not know how much better our economy was because they weren't feeling it. I think we left a void that they're going to fill. And you wrote about this, and you know this, Donald Trump's ability. And, I was like, they had JD Vance on every talk show, and most of the time I was like, oh my God, that's insane. But it was something, and people were seeing it, and they were hearing it. And I think for us to get out there now, here's my theory on this too.
And by the way, every single show, all the time, like you have to flood the zone because people don't. It's not 9 interviews; it's 900.
Listen, it's not linear, and you don't have to get a 10 out of 10 on every interview you do to be out there points, especially if you believe in it. Now, the thing that I'm hopeful about is to tell you in this is because I'm hearing it. Where are the Democrats? Where's the leadership? Where's the resistance? Where's all of this? President Obama made me in 2009 when he took office. He had about a 70% approval rating, far higher than this. He had the House and the Senate. There was no charismatic resistance. It was Boehner and Mitch McConnell. But you know what it was, and I experienced this. By the summer of 2010, the town halls, the stuff you're seeing in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, it's organic, and it was people. And the Republican leadership followed this. Now, I'm not going to say all of that was organic. It was funded. It was thoughtful. There were
astroturfed,
but a lot of it was relatively organic. And these are happening now in real time. And I think Democratic leadership needs to recognize that, seize upon it. If these town halls and public angst is there, at least get out there and throw some gas on it and get people gassed up, give them something to reason. And then we're going to have to recognize people want to see results. And I think our biggest strength right now is showing them their lack of results. But I hope somebody's thinking this through. What do results look like when we say we take the House back? What's that going to look like? I don't think over the last couple of years, no matter all the great work that I believe the Biden administration did, I don't think it translated much into the mainstream consciousness. And it may be your point on this is we should have just been flooding the zone 100% of the time. I'm an unabashed believer in a shadow government. We don't have the here to do it, but I think we should be doing that.
Well, and I also think that if people are not seeing like what the Biden administration did, and God love them, they were not, they came in during a pandemic, but what they did was they didn't do many interviews the first 2 years. They were really quiet, and they were like aggressive against the mainstream media, which in itself, it's fine. I mean, my husband is a real liberal, and he's always like, the mainstream media was, did this wrong and that wrong. And okay, sure. I'm not going to, I certainly have a horse in this race. So, okay. But the thing is, like, when you think about Donald Trump is talking to the media all the time. And the 4 years he was out of office, he had every journalist in the world down to Mar-a-Lago. I mean, people who hated him, people who he sued.
I think it's a model. I think there is a model there, Molly. And look, I know my shortcomings. I own what I own. I don't know if the media, the legacy media did all that they could have. But the lesson here is again, so not engaging them or criticizing them. That old adage, don't fight people who buy their ink in 50-gallon drums. And so engage on that landscape and be out there. So I do think that's there. I do think articulating things that improve people's lives. I always said this. I'm kind of at heart, and I had the advantage of this growing up when I did, strictly, squarely middle-class people, where you could kind of ignore the politics, if you will, instead of getting engaged the way you should. And I think right now, for us to make the case, I was kind of agnostic. Somebody said, well, you're a Democrat. How'd you get that? I said, I didn't go to the Democrats. They came to me. When my dad died, there was Social Security. I love my public school. When I applied for a Pell Grant, I got it. So all of a sudden now I'm like, well, hell, these are the people who are after me. And how in God's name did the party of the working class lose the working class voters to this billionaire who's clueless? And again, I wish there was some grand scheme amongst these guys. This is all about tax cuts. And damn, if we didn't give them every other side issue, again, I will kick myself that I got sucked in. I bet you I spent 3 or 4 days, maybe longer, not clowning, but just hammering them over the eating dogs and cats because it was so ridiculous. And I took that hook, line, and sinker. We were talking about immigration at a critical part of the campaign, and it was hurtful, and it pissed me off, and I was standing there to defend people, and it didn't do a damn bit of good electorally.
See, I love that you're beating yourself up about this because I too am beating myself up over the 2024 election cycle and all the things I got wrong.
Well,
So,
it's not the
but you
woe is me, it's like, we can't afford
no,
to get this wrong, and
no,
I'm not a pundit, I can only approach it from my perspective, and I think went around the country enough, and here look, I'm way more popular than Trump here, not
yeah,
because they necessarily love me, it's because people are getting free lunch, and it's
yeah,
because family and medical leave is coming, and if I have more people insured in healthcare, and those are things like, "Oh, I don't know if I like Walz or not," but I don't really have anything to, gripe about because 'cause they're delivering on these policies. And I think that's the thing that I am most focused on, and I would say this is where governors hold the key. Deliver against the onslaught of Trump, not just resisting him, but deliver policies that he can't deliver that are popular. And I would say that's why you lean into this gun stuff. Seriously, we're having conversations again on this issue of bathrooms when we can't keep guns out of our schools.
I just want to get back though to what I think you did wrong because I actually don't think that's what you did wrong.
Well, it was a
I
lot.
actually
We don't have time to cover all the things I
no,
did.
but honestly, the one thing I'm just saying this from you to me as friends who are now right now recording this is that I actually think what they did wrong with you was not let you do enough. Like just you should have
No,
been
I
out there
appreciate
all the
that.
time, 24/7. Because the thing is, like,
That would have come with its own problems, I would say, but no, but
but
I
who
I think
cares? I mean,
yeah, that's
if we
kinda where
learn
I'm at.
anything from Trump or JD Vance, it's that it's much better to, say something, whatever, like stupid about the Vietnam War and keep going, stupid,
Yeah,
or like say, so,
yeah. I
obviously,
would say the same is true of the vice president because I think what America started
100%.
to see and didn't know, like, somehow she was kind of quiet or whatever. She is dynamic, and she had this sense of charisma and presence,
Yes.
and
Yes.
especially amongst young people, where it was a calming presence. And I said this, Molly, that I just wish they would have told the story more. I watched it in real time. We were down in, like, Savannah, Georgia, outside of Savannah, Georgia, in a rural school, and the school was meeting us there, and we went in, and they had the band playing, and the cheerleaders were there, and the football players were there, and we were doing one of these little things where it's the meet and greet type of thing, and the vice president just casually mentions she was a band kid, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh my god."
Right.
Like, the humanizing part of that, and especially as a teacher
Yeah.
and as a parent of kids who were around, played the piano or whatever, it was a big deal, and I don't think America knew that.
And the thing is, it just can't be 10 interviews. It has to be 1,000. It can't be, it just has to be because the
The vice
media
president
because
has immense energy. Her work ethic
immense.
was her work ethic, her focus, like, she would tell me if I would say something, she's like, "Get off social media. Read this." So, it was how
Oh,
she had immense focus, a ton of energy,
yeah.
and as I said, her preparation was something to behold. If whatever you threw at her, she could do. Now look,
Yeah.
retrospect, hindsight's 20/20 or whatever, but I do think we have to watch what Trump did and learn from this, and I think that's where the Democrat public is screaming, "Where is everybody?" I think they want a news conference every day with a shadow secretary
Yes.
of defense, a shadow secretary of transportation, you know,
100%.
have somebody who understands as a doctor about why measles are bad. Like, these guys are putting out on their website that there's health benefits of measles. I
It's
you know, so I
insane.
think that piece of it as we regroup here, as we focus. Going back to that governor thing, my first job is I said I tell my team this, we have 2 real responsibilities in the Trump era: protect the most vulnerable and protect our gains. And
Yeah.
then I think as a more national voice, try to figure out how do we articulate and push back in a coherent manner. I think a daily briefing like COVID about what the damage they're doing from governors and things would be helpful. The public,
Humongous.
they're doing their job right now. People are showing up at these town halls,
Right.
staying engaged.
One of my friends, who is a very sort of nefarious political operative, said to me, I said, one of the many things I love about Tim Walz is, as when I was talking you up all over town, which I continue to do, is that he did these free breakfasts for children.
Yeah.
My friend said, free breakfast for children is a completely politically dumb thing to provide. And I was like, oh, and he's like, poor kids don't vote and their parents don't either.
Oh.
So I,
But you know
and
who he may not be wrong on that, it's morally the right thing to do, but you know what he's missing here was? It's one of the biggest tax cuts middle-class people got. I hear it from middle-class moms, Republican-leaning, that it did two things. It was a tax cut for them, and they didn't have to get up in the morning and make lunch. So they got time and they got money. And so I think he's missing that part of it, like who do we pander to, who do they vote or whatever. I will go to my grave believing if you do good policy, good politics will follow. These guys are doing terrible policy, and terrible politics will follow them. That's my start of the day, but it ain't going to happen on its own. We got to get out and work at it.
Thank you, Governor. I continue to be a fan.
I'll come see you here.
Yes, please do.